Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into one of the most dramatic origin stories of all time. We'll be using the accounts from the historian Josephus and the book of Exodus to piece together this incredible tale of fear, faith, and a prophecy that would change an empire forever. So our story doesn't actually kick off with some big, single event. It starts with this slow-burning tension. According to the historian Josephus, as the Egyptians became, in his words, delicate and lazy, the industrious Israelites were doing really well for themselves. But this success didn't inspire admiration, it did the exact opposite. It bred contempt. So how does that envy curdle into full-blown persecution? Well, it wasn't a sudden flip of a switch. It was more like a gradual poisoning of a relationship, and it was driven by fear and jealousy. Let's break down exactly why this happened. What the sources are really painting a picture of here is a society that's kind of in decline, and they're looking for a scapegoat. The success of the Israelites wasn't seen as a good thing for Egypt. It was seen as a direct threat. And, this is crucial, a new dynasty of pharaohs came into power who had absolutely no memory or just didn't care about how Joseph had once saved their entire nation. This historical amnesia basically paved the way for oppression. This simmering resentment was just about to boil over. And the spark that lit the flame? It was a terrifying prediction that struck right at the very heart of the Egyptian empire. Now, this is where it gets really fascinating, because our two sources give us slightly different but complementary reasons for Pharaoh's fear. In Exodus, it's more of a general anxiety, right? Hey, these people are getting more numerous and mightier than we are. But then Josephus comes in with this chillingly specific detail. A royal scribe warns the king that a single Hebrew child is destined to be born who will bring the Egyptian dominion low. So how does Pharaoh respond to this prophecy? With a horrific, kingdom-wide command. And let's be clear, this isn't just a political policy. This is an act of genocide, aimed at preventing his own downfall by wiping out an entire generation of Hebrew boys. In the face of all this national terror, our story zooms in. We go from the scale of a whole nation to the desperate hope of a single family. One couple, Amram and Jochebed, find themselves right in the middle of this nightmare. But this brings up a really good question. If this deadly decree was absolute, how in the world did Moses' older brother, Aaron, survive? Well, Josephus actually gives us an answer. He tells us that their father, Amram, was just consumed with fear and prayed for some kind of guidance. And in a dream, he gets a divine promise. Not only would his unborn son be saved, but his older son, Aaron, would also have a great purpose. This reassurance gave him the courage to defy the most powerful man in the world. Okay, so now we get to the part of the story that probably everyone knows. Armed with this divine promise, Moses' parents come up with an incredibly desperate plan to defy Pharaoh. So the most crucial point here is that this was not an act of abandonment. Not at all. It was a calculated, faith-driven strategy. For 3 whole months, they hid the baby. When they just couldn't hide him anymore, his mother builds this tiny ark and places him in the very same river that was supposed to be his grave, all while his sister Miriam watches from a distance. And right on cue, as if this were a movie, the one person with the power to both save and condemn this child appears, Pharaoh's own daughter, coming down to the riverbank. She spots this little basket floating there among the reeds, and of course, her curiosity gets the best of her, and she tells her attendants to go get it. The moment she opens that basket, she is just completely captivated. Josephus actually notes that divine care had made the child so beautiful that even the daughter of the man who ordered his death immediately felt like he had to be saved. And this is where his sister, Miriam, shows just how brilliant and quick-thinking she is. See, the baby refuses to feed from any of the Egyptian wet nurses they bring, so Miriam pops out from her hiding spot and makes this incredibly bold suggestion to the princess. In an absolutely incredible, you can't make this up turn of events, Miriam brings forward their own mother. The princess, having no idea who she is, hires her to nurse the child. The baby is returned to his mother's arms, and now she's getting paid by the royal court to take care of her own son. So let's just process this. The child who was meant to be destroyed is now being raised as a prince, right in the heart of the empire that fears his very existence. And according to Josephus, this wasn't some informal thing.
Pharaoh's daughter, who has no children of her own, formally adopts Moses. She then goes and presents him to her father, the Pharaoh, and declares her intention to make this Hebrew child the next in line for the throne of Egypt.
Just try to imagine the scene in the throne room, right? The king, maybe just playing along with his daughter, playfully takes his royal diadem, the very symbol of his absolute power, and places it on the infant's head. And then, the moment of absolute shock. The child, just being a child, throws the crown to the ground and stomps on it. Now, to everyone else in that court, this was not just a baby playing around. No, this was a horrifying, terrible omen.
The very same scribe who made the initial prophecy is there, and you can imagine, he sees his prediction coming to life right before his eyes. He absolutely panics, crying out to the king, demanding the child's immediate execution to save the kingdom.
But somehow, he survives. The princess snatches him away. The king hesitates. Josephus says it was divine providence that softened the king's heart, and so Moses is spared, and then given the finest education in all of Egypt, basically being groomed for the very throne he was prophesied to bring down. And that leaves us with one final, provocative thought. By trying so desperately to prevent this prophecy, did Pharaoh end up causing the exact thing he was afraid of? I mean, think about it. His brutal decree is what put the child in the river, which led him to the princess, which brought him into the palace, creating the very leader he feared most. What do you think?